save whatever remains of the planet Earth so that life may continue. The threat, global warming. We, and our unquenchable and our unending desire for more, that lead us to the abuse of nature and its resources. Until when can life be sustainable on Earth? With our desire to create and invent, environmental destruction came. With improvement came nature degradation. Discovery and extinction came as twins. Every solution posed another problem. And we, mankind, still have a chance to protect and preserve what is left. Will you be Earth's destroyer or preserver? Together, we will answer this. For this is the Earth's finest hour.
Kahit walang carbon dioxide, global warming naman tayo. Ang issue lang, napag-grabe.
Dumadami yung mga bagyo na malakas.
So what is global warming? We ask some people what they think.
Global warming is the increasing of temperature. Nakaka-apekto siya sa lahat ng living organisms sa buong mundo. It is a natural phenomenon.
One sentence about stewardship. So if you properly steward the resources, then parang cause and effect. Good stewardship would mean good environment. Same as if you have bad stewardship, then the result is global warming.
For 2.5 million years, the Earth's climate has fluctuated, cycling from ice ages to warmer periods. But in the last century, the planet's temperature has risen unusually fast, about 1.2 to 1.4 degrees Fahrenheit. Scientists believe it's human activity that's driving the temperatures up, a process known as global warming. Ever since the Industrial Revolution began, factories, power plants, and eventually cars have burned fossil fuels such as oil and coal, releasing huge amounts of carbon dioxide and other gases into the atmosphere. These greenhouse gases trap heat near the Earth through a naturally occurring process called the greenhouse effect. The greenhouse effect begins with the sun and the energy it radiates to the Earth. The Earth and the atmosphere absorb some of this energy, while the rest is radiated back into space. Naturally occurring gases in the atmosphere trap some of this energy and reflect it back, warming the Earth. Scientists now believe that the greenhouse effect is being intensified by the extra greenhouse gases that humans have released. Evidence for global warming includes a recent string of very warm years. Scientists report that 1998 was the warmest year in measured history, with 2005 coming in second. Meanwhile, readings taken from ice cores show that the greenhouse gases carbon dioxide and methane have hit their highest levels in the past 420,000 years. Arctic sea ice is also shrinking. According to NASA studies, the extent of Arctic sea ice has declined about 10% in the last 30 years. As long as industrialized nations consume energy and developing countries increase their fossil fuel consumption, the concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere will continue to rise. Researchers predict that temperatures will increase about 2 to 10 degrees Fahrenheit by the end of the century. What's less certain is what rising temperatures mean for the planet. Some climate models predict subtle changes. Others forecast rising sea levels which could flood coastal areas around the world. Weather patterns could change, making hurricanes more frequent. Severe droughts could become more common in warm areas, and species unable to adapt to the changing conditions would face extinction.
Well, global warming is just a part of what we call climate change. Climate change essentially is the long-term change in the weather patterns in the globe. Global warming can be caused by many things, but we can subdivide this into natural and man-made. But if you just look at the natural cause of global warming, this can be related to how the Earth would move around the sun, and of course other processes like volcanic eruptions would now introduce chemical components into the atmosphere that might influence how the heat from the sun is either trapped or reflected back into the Earth's atmosphere. So as the Earth would go around the sun, the variable there would be how the sun's energy is received in the Earth. And in the second example, the volcanic eruption, it is how the atmosphere, the chemical composition of the atmosphere is changed by the gases that volcanoes would erupt. Remember, the greenhouse gas would include carbon dioxide. Now, volcanoes emit carbon dioxide during eruptions. But for a carbon dioxide gas or the other greenhouse gases to influence the temperature of the Earth, they have to be at the lowest part of the atmosphere. Okay, that is like 16 kilometers below. If, on the other hand, the gas is erupted well above that, then that will not become a greenhouse gas. So therefore, if the volcanic eruption is not so explosive, and it happened millions of years ago and even now, like in Hawaii, the volcanoes would not emit explosively the gas, but it would just be well below the 15 kilometers. Or some eruptions like Mayon recently is not so high. So therefore, the greenhouse gas, carbon dioxide, would increase a little bit for the volcanoes that are currently erupting. However, the amount of carbon dioxide emitted by the volcanoes currently all over the world is so small compared to the amount of carbon dioxide that man is releasing into the atmosphere. Not all volcanoes, when they erupt, will cause global warming. They can also actually cause global cooling.
Dati-rati, 2 to 7 years ang recurrence ng El Nino at La Nina. But during the decade from 2000 up to the present, parang naano namin na nagiging frequent. Tsaka yung malalakas na bagyo na dati, ang signal number lang nare-release ng Pag-asa hanggang number 3. But we modified it to number 4 kasi nga, nakikita namin na parang dumadami yung mga bagyo na malalakas.
One of the effects of global warming is the heavier than usual amount of rainfall. Last year, we've experienced 2 memorable typhoons, Ondoy and Pepe.
What can happen during global warming? Experts say that global warming can exacerbate the already existing natural hazards in the Philippines. One can expect that since there will be warmer temperature, there will be more water evaporated from the ocean, there will be more water that will be poured down on land. So there can be more flood events which can be bigger in magnitude. Landslides can be more frequent. Now, if also there will be global warming, the glaciers either in the mountains or the poles would be melted, so there will be sea level rise. And the sea level rise would now drown coastal areas. If the sea level would rise and there will be a typhoon that would go towards the shoreline, then if the sea level is already higher, then more seawater can move further inland. So a wider area can be flooded.
What you call this? Insects, like it was, alam niyo na yun, mosquitoes, yung dengue and then malaria. The mosquitoes love warm climate. So as the temperature increase, so these insects love to grow in that. They thrive in those damp and warm environment. We had an El Nino that ended in June. So this was the worst level ng Angat Dam. Do you know that Angat Dam supplies more than 95% of the domestic water use of Metro Manila? So yan ang unang-unang problema. Of course, agriculture din sa irrigation. So then of course, maraming nagtatalo-talo dyan sa kung sino ang unahin, domestic water use ba ng Metro Manila or the agriculture. But of course, mas importante of course yung domestic use ng Metro Manila. So when the level of the Angat Dam becomes critical, only the domestic use of Metro Manila is being supplied. So irrigation becomes less priority. So agriculture, of course, will suffer.
Are we going to wait for another Ondoy and Pepeng? Or perhaps, people might say, what's in it for me?
We are part of the UNFCCC and we are signatory to the Kyoto Protocol. Ano ba itong Kyoto Protocol? This is an agreement between countries na they should limit or their emission of greenhouse gases. Like, of course, this is true for the developed countries like US, Japan, Europe, and many other developed countries. So by this, they are bound to reduce their emissions. But in the Philippines, we opt to, we have what we call the mitigation and adaptation options.
Do you think the Philippines is producing a lot of greenhouse gas? No, very small, much less than 1%. So therefore, if you think of reducing the amount of greenhouse gas, there are many ways by which we can. However, the amount of gas contributed by many other countries is so much that even if we reduce, there will still be global warming, that you cannot avoid being affected by the harmful effects of global warming. So the next measure is to adapt. So in terms of responses to climate change, you have to know mitigation and adaptation. Mitigation is to reduce the amount of greenhouse gas that will go into the atmosphere. So what are the causes of the emission of greenhouse gas? Using fossil fuel. So if you look at the energy sources in the country, you can probably use more renewable energy. Okay. Hydropower, geothermal power. Maybe you don't use a lot of motor vehicles. Maybe you can walk. You can walk 2 kilometers, 3 kilometers if you can. How about using electrical power? Maybe you don't use much air conditioning or you don't much of your TV. Okay, or use the other thing to reduce the amount of carbon in the atmosphere is the carbon being taken in by the trees will help the amount to be reduced. So therefore, plant more trees. Don't cut more trees. Or don't waste your paper because this would come from trees. So young people would have to know that they can do a lot of things in reducing the amount of carbon by saving something, by recycling. Okay? Now, in terms of adaptation, you can. We cannot avoid being flooded. So if you're in a flooded area, you have to prepare for the hazards.
The experts have spoken. Facts and figures were shown. Global warming is happening and it affects us. But something can be done. Yes, many things can still be done to fight global warming. The best time to move is now. Glenn Molina, this is the Earth's finest hour.
There comes a time when we hit a certain cold, when the world must come together as one. There are people dying when it's time to lend a hand to life. Greatest gift of all. We can't go on pretending day by day
that someone somehow will soon make a change.
We are all a part of God's great big family. just you and me. Well, send them your heart, oh, so they know that someone cares.
So their cries for help will not be in vain.
We can't let them suffer. No, we cannot turn away.
Right now, they need a helping hand. No someone lie. We are the children. We are the ones who make them right.